Hey everybody, this is Dr. Julie Quinn, and I wanted to go over with you some of the differences between what a trade publication looks like and what an academic journal article looks like. I think that the distinction is really important, and I wanted to use your writing assignment 2, the literature review, to help you decipher the two. So this is the literature review sample that's provided in class. And I'm scrolling all the way to the references right now, and I want you to take a look at the references with me. What you can see here are some distinctions. And the first way a professor or reader can tell whether your source is professional or quote-unquote academic, and often there's overlap, by the way, is by looking at the references. We cannot tell often in the body of your essay, because in the body of your essay or your assignment or your lit review, you're naming the authors and the copyright year in your in-text citation. But we can tell the quality of your research by looking at your references list. And I know you went over this in prior English classes, I'm sure, but this is a good reminder. If you look at the first one, you'll see the ADP Research Institute. So it's already an organization and not a set of individuals. So let's actually go. I want to open up a new file really quickly, and I'm going to create maybe a table here. Okay, so here's my table, and it's a super brief one, and I'm going to show you some indicators. Now, these are not entirely, all-inclusive, but when you go back to the sample, you see that it's an organization and it's not a set of individuals. Then that's probably telling you that it's the publisher, or excuse me, the author is an organization. An academic scholarly text will, generally speaking, list individual authors, right? A group may publish something, but it's not always the case. But when you're looking at content, where it's found, one of the other ways to determine whether something's a professional text or it's academic or scholarly often is where you find it. Professional content is found through a Google search, and most academic research is found through library content. Okay, you can see that this has like a document indicator number, that if you searched that in a library database, the article would come right up. You don't see a general URL here because a lot of academic journals may publish an abstract on the web from their web presence website, but you find the entire article itself through the UMGC library databases, right? You can tell as well by the type of content and how it's organized. So organization, so no, this one will have no issue, volume, usually page numbers, or DOI. And then the academic text most often has these issues, volume numbers, and DOI. Let me show you an example within the sample here. So what I noticed is a lot of students were saying that the Harvard Business Review article was academic, and I understand your instinct to want to automatically say that this is an academic article, but it actually is not. It's a trade publication. The Business Review, with the name Harvard, you may think because it's affiliated with the university, it's automatically going to be an academic article, but it really isn't. If you look up the Harvard Business Review website, you'll notice that it is a magazine that leads you to the magazine. The distinction between magazine and journal article is that magazines are glossier, have lots of images. The website is laid out for us to have immediate access and read them. And one of the main differences, if we look at this particular article, you see also we get advertisements. You can tell that I found this through a Google search. This is a very recent text that was published just a day or two ago by Michelle King, and we have one author's name. In a lot of these publications, it's one or two authors. If we go into our document list, professional, and it also depends on the field. Academic and scholarly will have many authors in the sciences, and then one author in the humanities. And this isn't always, again, but these are the trends that I want to show you, right? So professional articles that are published in magazines will often have one, but if you go back and you look at the this particular one from the International Journal of Workplace Health Management, the Colson article, multiple authors, multiple authors. Not always, but quite often. So that's a really important distinction, and a lot of it, of course, depends on your research. So if you're researching in the humanities, if somebody's doing work on art history and they're comparing the art of the Renaissance to modern art, that may be one author. But when you're doing a lot of science research, think genetics research. This is outside of the work that we're doing in this class, but just for general understanding of academic research, what you're going to find is that there are teams of researchers, and so you tend to get longer lists of authors. And for this one, of course, there's only one, and it's in a journal, so that doesn't always fit my standard, but it will. So a really good example of a trade publication in the Lit Review was the Korn Ferry Institute text. So if we take this URL, and I'm going to plug it into the web, and I'm going to take a peek at it. You can see that there's no paywall, that the author is a group. It's a shorter piece of content here. It's just a couple of paragraphs. Usually it's direct, it's content that's directly actionable. Here's information that you can kind of try to do in your workplace today, right? Or something to think about. But if you look at academic journal articles, and I actually went into research for my field, because I'm a professor, I thought, well, let me find an interesting research article and let me show you the differences. And then, of course, professional short texts rarely has works cited or references. Longer, more technical, a lot of references. Okay, so if we go into my research list, we're not looking at editorial boards, but we're going to find an article, and I thought arming teachers would be a really interesting text. So let's take a look at this one. One of the tricks to determining whether you're using academic research or not is in your searching. Let's just go back to the search. Let me start from scratch. Within your search on the left-hand side, and then when you do a one search, you can actually toggle this earlier, but you always want to choose full text and scholarly. So the difference between these guys, let me actually insert another row here, row below, is professional doesn't have an entire editorial review board. They have professional writers, and then think journalists, but like field journalists. Whereas academic and scholarly articles, you'll notice that the authors do not work for the organization. They usually will have an affiliation. Usually it's a government or school, and they submit their work for publication. And by the way, they rarely get paid. They do this because it's part of the academic requirements of the or their professional requirements with their government agency that they must do this research. And then think of the national researchers at the National Institutes of Health. They would be a really good example of this, right? So in the research, in the library databases, when I do my search, if you choose scholarly, you're going to omit all of those professional publications. That is going to be really important for your Lit Review coming up. So if we click on the article that I had found before, I know it's scholarly. And of course, you can also, choose timely articles too by changing the window with which you search. Okay, so I click on this title, and you can see in here that the authors' names are hyperlinked. It's the American Journal of Public Health. And we know it's scholarly because it's been marked within the database that way. So we didn't find this through Google. We actually found this by going specifically into the library databases. You see we've got DOI information here. And if you click on lead author is Melanie Rogers. If we click on her, we may be able to find a little bit about her. Here's everything else that she's published in academic peer-reviewed journal articles. The other way you can find out who she is, and I've always recommend that students do this, is if you open the actual article itself, you can go into the PDF. Let's take a peek. You may find there are two authors here. Let's see. Oh, no, that's the one before it. Excuse me. That's about the authors. I know this font is really small, and I apologize, but this is really important. This tells you that it's an academic article. Okay, Melanie Rogers is with the University of New England, and Laura Avares is with the University of Minnesota School of Public Health. They list all of the authors' affiliations, and the authors are not affiliated with the publication itself, right? Korn Ferry, the publication itself, just has like a little article here. In the one that I pulled up, the Arming Teachers. It's a smaller article, but you'll notice even in the smaller one, it's got a ton of references that the Korn Ferry article did not. Most of these tend to actually be much longer. Let me show you just one more real quick. Here's an academic article that's not a journal article, but it's a policy brief that I found through the library databases. And it's from a publication called The Rural Educator. And you'll see that it is 6 pages long with data. And you can tell that if you compare it to that Korn Ferry article, the Korn Ferry article just says Korn Ferry conducted a survey of 2,000 professionals, but you don't know what those questions were. You don't know whether there's any sort of bias related to those questions. Who is Korn Ferry affiliated with? We could look that up, right? But just from this article, you would have to do a little bit more digging first. But if you look at this one, you can see the research that's presented. You see the embedded names of additional secondary research that the authors did, including the primary research they gathered. And you see a references list. This one is actually done in APA, so it makes it nicely readable and comparable to the work that you guys do. So that, in the end, are the differences. So again, sometimes these overlap. For example, you can find academic scholarly journal articles on the web. There are a lot of these open source websites that do that now. They didn't used to do it before. They were behind these paywalls and in these databases, and you had to have like a subscription to some of these journals, but that tends to be changing a little bit. But when you're doing your research going forward, I want there to be a healthy balance between the academic, scholarly, that these longer, more technical, a lot of references, and the professional articles that are good for quick reads. And the academic scholarly is good for the in-depth understanding, the nuances, and some of the emerging research that takes months, if not years, to write. Let me add that one final column, because they're not going to tell you right away, but you'll get a sense of so these are those distinctions. I'm going to share this table with you in relation to the video that I recorded here, and I hope this helps you make this distinction. And as you start your research, if you have any questions, just let me know.